We begin tonight with developing news on the Dzhokhar Tsarnaev death sentence.
This afternoon, a federal judge made it official, ordering former UMass Dartmouth student turned terrorist Dzhokhar Tsarnaev to die for the 2013 Boston Marathon bombings.
And not before Tsarnaev broke his silence and apologized to his victims. Tsarnaev addressed dozens of survivors and relatives of the deceased in the courtroom, telling them he's sorry for what he did. It was his first public apology.
Earlier, Tsarnaev heard impassioned statements from dozens of marathon bombing survivors, many angry, some defiant, others forgiving.
Well, outside of court, dozens of anti-death penalty advocates protested the death sentence, but prosecutors insist the punishment fits the crime.
A crime of terrorism, a crime that was not religiously motivated, and a crime that was intended to coerce and intimidate our country.
Now, cameras are not allowed in federal court, but Eyewitness News reporter Jared Pliner was there.
He joins us now live from Boston with a first-hand account of today's emotional sentencing.
Mike Shannon, good evening. Well, the final part of an extraordinary trial, as Judge George O'Toole called it today, now over. The district court's job is basically done. Now it will be up to an appeals court.
Did you talk with him about what he wanted to say?
Eyewitness News lobbing questions at Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's lead attorney, Judy Clark, outside court after her client was formally sentenced to death Wednesday. Not a word. We did receive word from Dzhokhar Tsarnaev opening his mouth for the first time in all these months. But first, survivors and families of victims addressed him, people tied to Martin Richard, Crystal Campbell, Sean Collier. Lingzi Lu's family is in China. From Bill and Denise Richard, robbed of their 8-year-old, their strength, a model. He chose hate, he chose destruction, he chose death. This is all on him. We choose love, we choose kindness, we choose peace. That is what makes us different from him. Rebecca Gregory, who lost a leg, slammed the 21-year-old Tsarnaev in her southern twang, saying she refuses to be anyone's victim. Choosing to mess with us was a terrible idea, she said. So how's that for a victim impact statement? And before the judge did what he was bound to do, accent-wrapped English we've not heard before from the mouth of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, an apology. I'm sorry for the lives that I've taken, for the irreparable damage, how unbearable it was what I put you through. I took them from you.
I regret having ever wanted to hear him speak because what he said showed no remorse, no regret, and no empathy for what he's done to our lives.
And coming up at 6 o'clock, a Rhode Island woman who became an inspiration to her state, what she had to say to Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Mike and Shannon.
Jared, one of the difficulties of covering this trial has been the fact that no cameras are allowed in the courtroom. So tell us what the tone was like in that room when the sentence was imposed.
Well, Shannon, I've said it before, and it seems like a cop-out, and that there's some more complicated word that captures all of it. Well, you know what? The word is basic, and it is sad. All humans understand that term. It's somber. There's nothing else that can be said. People's lives have been forever changed. They've been destroyed. I think it's very cathartic sometimes for people to sit in a room with those who have been through similar experiences and hear people recounted in their own individual way, their stories, and that's what we did today. There were tears shed, as we knew there would be, and there was a lot of solidarity. And these people are going to be bound inextricably for a long time to come. You know, there was another demeanor, and that's Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Back to you guys.
We begin with the Boston Marathon bomber's death sentence. Today, a judge formally ordered Dzhokhar Tsarnaev to die in prison.
The man who, along with his brother, was convicted of killing 4 people and injuring hundreds more, spoke for the first time this afternoon, addressing survivors and apologizing for what he had done.
New at 6, we're hearing what survivor Newport native Heather Abbott had to say to Tsarnaev.
Eyewitness News reporter Jared Pliner has been following this case now for months. He joins us once more live outside Boston Federal Court. Jared?
Mike Shannon, good evening. You know, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev didn't exactly look survivors and victims' families in the eyes. I looked, his glance was sort of down, sometimes off to the side. And one woman who addressed him, as you mentioned, a woman from a city by the sea. Eyewitness News catching up with Newport's Heather Abbott Wednesday, just after a judge formally sentenced Dzhokhar Tsarnaev to death. She had no comment for the cameras, but she did speak in court, saying she is not broken. I didn't care much what happened to the defendant. I care about what lies ahead for me and others. Unfortunately, nothing lies ahead for 4 angels, as they have been dubbed: Martin Richard, Crystal Campbell, Lindsay Liu, and Sean Collier. Collier's sister, Jennifer Rogers, on the man who took them in open court. He is a coward and a liar. He showed no remorse. He hid behind a dead man. He walked into this courtroom with a swagger, she said. He is a leech, and he spit on the American dream.
The last thing we wanted to hear was about Allah and why he did this in the first place and changed all our lives forever.
Lynn Julian not satisfied with what came out of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's mouth for the first time. I am guilty. I did do it, along with my brother. I'm sorry for the lives that I've taken, for the irreparable damage. And there was also some talk today before the judge imposed sentence about where Dzhokhar Tsarnaev would ultimately be executed, and the judge did accept the government's recommendation of Terre Haute, Indiana, the site of federal death row and the federal death chamber. Mike and Shannon.
Jared, today was the first time we ever heard from Tsarnaev, ever heard his voice. What was it like to hear him speak after all these months?
Shannon, that's one of those visceral moments where I actually turned to the journalist next to me when you started to hear his voice, and we both just said to each other, wow. And then when he finished, we said, wow. What I can tell you is that he does speak with some sort of an accent wrapped around his English that is quite noticeable. As Lynn Julian say, he began by mentioning Allah, and we sort of looked around and said, well, where is this going to go? Because this could go in a lot of different places. But it was pretty composed. It was fairly apologetic. Remorse goes to somebody's mindset, so I can't speculate as to what's going on in his head. But he speaks quite well. He's clearly intelligent, and he thanked the judge. He thanked his attorneys for being alongside him all of these months. He thanked the jurors. He thanked the witnesses who testified on his behalf. And then it was all said and done, and the judge did his part, and sure enough, we were all out of there. It was all over. Back to you guys.